Welcome to Shares Who, your top spot for politics. My role in providing great political content requires your participatory role as a viewer, a liker of this video, a commentator down below of your opinions, and subscribe to the Shares Who channel. Now let's go over that which keeps this channel running. Started with Mr. Farley Perkins over at the Farley Perkins Agency. Great for Tidewater insurance needs. Just hit up 757-2716-655. Let's say it's late in the evening like right now and you feel like an ice cream or a shake and you're in Portsmouth. Head over to 340 High Street in ELG Sweet Boutique for all your great confection needs. Or perhaps you just really need some good Southern food for dinner, then you're going to need to head up Ellen's Homestyle and Barbecue Express LLC, which has a location here in Portsmouth and another one in Virginia Beach across from Regent University. So look them up. Also, Positive Vibes Incorporated, which will help you with credit fixes and taxes and handling private money and debt consolidation. Help you out there. And if you also need a DJ, Mr. Seiko Varner is great as a DJ. And he also created the Hampton Roads Green Book, a great application to help you find Hampton Roads Black-owned businesses. And of course, I don't want to forget the Black Swan podcast run by my lovely wife, Andrea Dixon Chesviner. Look for great content as they come about. So tonight's show will feature a special guest running for delegate in Virginia's 52nd district. I say to you that Shares Who is your top spot for politics. Well, folks in Lynchburg and Campbell County are about to find out right now. Reza Hayes is my guest. I'll bring her on right now. Miss Reza, how is your evening over in Lynchburg doing this night?
It's really good tonight. Thank you for having me on. We had the really heavy thunderstorm earlier, but it's finally cleared up.
And over here in Hampton Roads, I bet one of those thunderstorms are going to be coming our way, I'd say around 10:30, 11 o'clock. So hopefully it stays, soft enough it doesn't knock out our power, but I bet it's still coming. So glad to have you on. I can't wait to discuss your campaign with you. So for the Shares Who viewer, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said in the introduction, I am running for Lynchburg City in Campbell County. I moved here about 11 years ago, and I've loved this community. I decided to purchase a home here with my husband, and I am running to give people a voice who don't normally have a voice. As someone who grew up in extreme poverty, as well as being autistic, I represent people who have felt the political sphere has ignored them for the last couple decades. And so I want to be that representation people wish they had.
Right. Now, if you don't mind me saying, I'm intrigued by your running because you're confidently speaking on your autism. And I understand it's Disability Pride Month. So what does your candidacy, in effect, mean for others in Virginia?
So by talking about openly being autistic, I'm doing a couple of different things. One, it's something I never wanted to hide, but I had debated a while whether or not I would talk about it on the campaign trail at all. And the reason I chose to do so is because I represent sort of a type of autism that people don't really think about that actually represents the majority of people on the autism spectrum disorder. And we are 1 in 36 people, and we do not represent 1 in 36 in the House or any legislative. There is only one other elected official that is openly autistic. She is in Pennsylvania, and I'm hoping to be the second in the country.
All right. If you don't mind me asking, because this is a political-based show, what could you break down of your political journey, if you will? I understand you came to Virginia to study at Liberty University over there in Lynchburg as a Christian conservative. But how do you get to where you are now?
So my journey was kind of long. I had already started questioning a lot of the beliefs that I held. My grandparents, who I lived with for about a year and a half, were very conservative, Fox News only on the channel. So Liberty University was one of the schools I chose just because I Googled Christian University and I wanted to go to the other side of the country. I actually didn't know who the Falwells were at all. I'm originally from California and they're not really big out there. So moving here was interesting to learn about who the Falwells were and what their school represented. And the more I studied, I had a lot of issues with the biblical the biblical classes at Liberty. I have read the Bible numerous times, and a lot of the things they were teaching students was actually incorrect. And that made me start questioning other things they were teaching. And I started talking to people that I had not been exposed to before, different cultures, different beliefs. And the more I listened to other people, the more I questioned a lot of the things that I believed. And that led me on a pretty long journey of deconstructing conservatism and figuring out what religion looked like for me and what I actually believed in. And then when I was diagnosed as autistic at age 24, I realized a lot of the bullying and difficulty making friendships that I had as a child up until as an adult in Christian circles was really a disability that they were ostracizing me for. So that also pushed me away from a lot of the same circles because I wanted to be true to who I was as well as be accepted for who I was instead of continually being pushed into a box.
Now, I do want to put some comments on the screen. I'm glad I already have one from over on Facebook. Jessica Anderson for Virginia House of Delegates says, "Hey, Risa." So, hey, Miss Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Hope you guys converse and just talk shop over the days, because I think it's important for people who are running for office to know each other and talk amongst yourselves. I also want to say hello to Mel Cartwright. Risa Hayes is the one to watch. Great candidate. Thank you, Mel Cartwright. I'd love to have you on the show as well, as Shez, who discusses politics. Now, it's not just for the Democrats, even though I am one, you're one. We probably share a lot of similar ideas. But as we go about our daily, stuff with politics and keeping up with the news, I like to troll people. I like to troll Virginia Republican Delegate Nick Freitas. I did so recently in a post where he was criticizing the failure of socialist policies where all the capitalists are looted or something or other. I simply posted the word Denmark with a smiley face on his post. Then I shared his post on my page, tagging him, and it started a vigorous back and forth. And wouldn't you know it, Freitas and so many conservatives said that Denmark and many other nations I'd use as an example are actually capitalist countries, not socialist. That's where he fails, because people calling themselves socialist in this country are only borrowing ideas you will find in many European nations. They have great social safety nets. Hell, even Finland has a housing first policy which guarantees good housing for anyone who is homeless. You've experienced the horrendous feeling of homelessness, and you know where this nation fails and falls short in taking care of homeless people. So, as a delegate, what would you like to do on that?
Yeah, so I did experience homelessness. My dad lost his job when I was in first grade, and shortly after we lost the house and ended up living in a tent for over 8 months. One of the things that people have a misunderstanding about homelessness is there's this idea that it is a character flaw instead of just a flaw of the system. I think a government's job is to take care of people that are at the bottom of the system, not the top. The top can take care of themselves. So one of the things I'd like to do is, as Virginia is a Dillon rule state, which means that cities can't make any decisions unless the state has allowed them to do so. So I would like the state to create permission for cities to create rent caps. By putting a rent cap in based off of the economics of that city, it would be better than if a statewide rent cap went through, which would have to accommodate both places like Richmond versus someplace like Lynchburg that has less income than Richmond, or even some of the more rural areas. So it's better to have the flexibility that a city council can apply instead of just forcing it in a state level. I also want to make sure that the quality of homes is taken care of by creating stricter regulatory systems for rental properties.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, you've also experienced the need for food stamps. As we know, Republicans just gutted both Medicaid and food stamps in their big, beautiful bill. Now, on one hand, I want to criticize Democrats of the past 6 or so years because they had a presidency, a Senate, and a House and couldn't get close to getting Build Back Better passed. They even ended up blaming a Senate parliamentarian among certain Democrat sellouts in the legislature as well. So I maintain straight up, if Build Back Better was passed, we wouldn't be seeing the big, beautiful bill. Now we have your election, and we need fighters to help protect Virginians facing hard cuts in Medicaid and food stamps. And I'm curious what you would like to do.
So one of the big things I want to go after is corporations that pay their workers so low of wages that they're on food stamps. So these corporations are getting tax cuts from the government as well as, having workers do the job, and they're still not paying enough. So the government is not only doing the tax cuts, but they're also paying for people's food stamps. So one of the things I'd like to do is put a penalty in place for corporations for every worker that is on food stamps or WIC or any other government program. They have to pay the state back for those resources. I also want to push to change the minimum wage. Not only do I want to raise it up to the 15 like was promised a few years ago, but I want to put in a bill that will make the minimum wage grow with the economy. So we don't have the same issue 3, 4, 10 years down the road. We have a system already put in place that the minimum wage will keep up with the inflation.
Personally, I like the idea of hearing that. I do know here in Virginia, I think it's probably a little bit over 12 now because it's starting to phase itself a little bit up and a little bit up. 2026, it'll be more so. I am going to be curious, that this is just something that came to mind now. Because recessions don't usually last long, but if there was a recession, say like 2008, and the value of the dollar deflated, does that actually mean that there would be a little bit reduction in the wage? Personally, I would hope that no, we would write that the wages would stay the same until the economy corrects. But I do like the idea of your bill proposal here of raising the wages as the economy goes along.
Yeah, I do not want anything in there that would drop the wage. I understand that a recession will have effects on everything, but the minimum wage should never go backwards.
I agree with that. Another comment by Ms. Milk Cartwright. The working poor, the corporate state is the welfare state. And right on. For my next question, I want to cite my all-time favorite political show is Veep. It's well written. It's obscenely funny. I'm rewatching it again. But the previous favorite political show was The West Wing. One character on there, Sam Seaborn, was one of the speechwriters for the president. He was a special person on the show. He had a quote which really stuck with me over the years, and it's this: education is the silver bullet. Education is everything. We don't need little changes. We need gigantic, monumental changes. Schools should be palaces. The competition for the best teachers should be fierce. They should be making six-figure salaries. Schools should be incredibly expensive for government and absolutely free of charge to its citizens, just like national defense. That's my position. I just haven't figured out how to do it yet. So I have a feeling you're one candidate to really appreciate the value of good public education, do you not?
Yeah, so my family, we were homeschooled. And the reason we were homeschooled is when we were homeless and in that tent, the area we were in did not actually have a public school. We were on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. And so my mom had no choice but to change us over to homeschooling. And I ended up choosing to remain homeschooled even when we moved into an area that had a public school system because of my learning disability. It made it easier. We didn't know I had a learning disability. We just knew I learned better from one-on-one. That being said, my mother is a heavily educated woman. She is so smart. She has more degrees than I can count. Every time I'm talking to her, she has another degree. So education was emphasized that is not the case for every homeschooled family, and it's something that is very tragic. I have many friends who would not be able to go to college if they wanted to because their education was so lacking. So I think access to public schools is important to our society. We need to make sure that people are educated, not just in the basics with math, history, science, all of those are musts, but also in technology. I actually applied for a job, and one of the first questions they asked me was if I knew how to use Word. And I thought that question was funny because everyone knows how to use Word, and I said so. And he said, actually, people younger than me that are graduating from high school don't actually know how to use Word or Excel or any of those programs because they're so used to using everything on their phone. They don't know how to use computers and know how to use the computer programs. So we are failing them, and we're making sure that they are not able to get jobs in the future because of how computer-based all of our work is going to be. So I think we definitely need to fund our schools better. I would like to move us from the faculty-based funding that we are now back to the student-based funding. We were student-based funding up until 2012. There was a deficit, and instead of using the emergency funds that are there for emergencies, the House or the state decided to switch over to the faculty base, and that has put our schools underfunded ever since. So we need to go back to the original funding, and we need to prioritize school funding.
Definitely like the sound of that. I do believe also, like Mr. Sam Seaborn of the West Wing, a great public education is a good thing. Housing, of course, we spoke briefly on it before. It's also one of the foremost drivers of inflation, definitely over the past 5 years, and has had an affordability issue dating long before that. And when you factor in workers not being paid what they're really worth. So, how would you like to address housing in Virginia through the eyes of a delegate?
One of the issues we have to acknowledge is how many houses are being purchased by corporations and how many houses are empty. We have a housing crisis, but some of that is sort of falsified by leaving houses empty to be able to inflate rental prices. We need to make sure that corporations are held accountable for that, and to make sure that if houses are empty for a significant amount of time, that those corporations either need to pay a fee or the houses need to go back on the market. I'm not exactly sure how that would look. That is something that I still need to workshop before making a bill decision, but it is something I have considered. The other thing, I'm sorry, my brain stopped for a second. The other thing I learned recently, I went to a housing summit and I got to talk to a lot of people who specialize in building houses as well as the challenges there are. And they said their biggest challenge actually is zoning laws. They have a really hard time being able to put different types of houses or multifamily houses such as townhouses or condos. They don't have the ability to do that because of the zoning laws. So with being forced to only put single family housing up, that limits how many people we can put in areas. And in areas that are growing, such as Lynchburg is getting larger. We need to be able to put more people in a smaller area. So I'd like to take a look at the zoning laws and make them better.
That I appreciate as well. I'm reminded of former delegate Samara in the Northern Virginia aspect, who was running on changing some of the zoning laws from the Dillon rule on down, which created a lot of not in my backyard type of responses from a lot of people. But I still, like you, think that is needed. I want to move it now to the concept of working. And I work decently hard, not as hard as people like Dante Strabino and Kurt Dietrich for Virginia Beach workers when the idea of collective bargaining came to Virginia Beach city table. At the time, I was a Parks and Recreation employee. You were running to be a voice in Richmond. What would you like to tinker with the right, the work law, and greater workers' rights?
So I know that right to work is a hot topic right now, especially with the governor candidate, Abigail Spanberger, saying that she would not repeal the whole law. I would still like to see if we can come to the table and find a way to alter it, Personally, I would like a full repeal, but if that's not going to happen, I want to come to the table and see if we can create a compromise. Right to work is a racist law. It was created during the Jim Crow era, and it was made specifically to keep Black workers out of white jobs. And we have to acknowledge that. And if we continue to ignore that part of the history, we cannot acknowledge the history that Virginia has and do better. The other thing is with collective bargaining, example, teachers cannot use collective bargaining, and I think that is a disservice to them. They should be allowed to negotiate their wages, and we should be able to meet those wages so that they can make a living. I have a teacher friend who works multiple jobs as well as being a teacher. He has almost no free time because he loves teaching children and it's his passion, but he can't live on it, and that's an atrocity in my opinion. So we need to make sure that collective bargaining is available for all unions, as well as making sure that we acknowledge the racism of right to work and remove it if possible.
I definitely encourage you, being one of the voices, to mention that it has a racist origin, and it still has negative racial connotations simply by existing here in Virginia. And I think it's important for you to keep saying that. So I thank you for being that truthful about it. Now, I have sort of burned through a little bit of my political questions, but I want you to sort of mention a couple of the things maybe politically that maybe you would like to mention here on this show. As you do that, I will put on the share screen for your website here because I want people to go to that and learn more about you. But any other political things on your mind, I would like to give you the floor to speak on them.
Yeah, there is one more thing that I'm really focused on, and that is removing at-will laws. As an autistic person, I have lost jobs based off of social situations that I didn't understand were issues. I take accountability that I was one of them. I was very sarcastic, although I didn't realize sarcasm could lose you a job. Instead of taking the time to sit me down and acknowledge that I do have a social disability, I was fired immediately. I didn't cuss at anyone. I didn't insult them. I didn't throw or scream or anything that would be a harmful work environment. But with that firing, I went and spoke to an attorney because it seemed unfair. And he told me that because they at-will laws, you can be fired for any reason with zero legal repercussion for that company. That included, they could fire you. And the example he used was being too tall. And to me, that sounded like a failure in the system. There should be a legitimate reason for losing your job, and it should be clearly documented. And I think when we let corporations just remove workers for any reason, arbitrary or not, we are leaving room for discrimination to happen without any proof that it's discrimination. So I think it's important that we strengthen discrimination laws and make sure that people of color, minority groups, disabled people have access to protections under the laws that do exist. In this state right now, only 23% of disabled people have jobs. That is a horrible number. And a lot of us do want to work and have a passion for jobs, but the jobs we are often offered are the sort of the back of the room, out of the way, nobody wants to look at you jobs. And that isn't right, because a lot of us are educated and we deserve to have jobs based off of our education and our abilities.
I am heartened to actually hear that you mentioned the at-will aspect of laws here, because right to work seems like the big news worthy type aspect to labor laws here in Virginia. I remember when Abigail said that she only wanted to partially reform it as opposed to outright repeal it, but no one talks about the at-will law. So I'm glad you're bringing that to the forefront as someone who has gone from job to job himself over the years. He knows how possible it is to just be plucked from a job without much, I don't necessarily want to say consent, but valid reasoning for being fired. So I'm glad you bring that up. And another comment, as Smell Cartwright, ageism as well. It's a solid point. These are all reasons that we should have a look at those at-will laws. And thank you again, Riza, for bringing that up. Now I want to shift a little bit to speaking about the area that you're from. It was a Chez Who staple of mine. I like to talk about the areas of the people that I bring on. And you're in Lynchburg and a little bit of Campbell County in Virginia. So if you could just talk about what you've learned about it over the years, what has been your favorite groups, businesses out there, places to go and be social, just really give us a good commercial for Lynchburg, I guess.
Yeah, so like I said, I moved here 11 years ago, and I have learned so much. It's got a small town feel as it grows. The downtown is always changing, and there's a lot to do. There's beautiful parks and walking paths. I actually live less than a 2-minute walk from one of the parks here, and it is beautiful all year round. Well, unless it's flooding and lightning, but that's understandable. There's also a great museum. It's small, but they're constantly rotating out the displays so that you never get tired of going there. There's always something new you can learn. And something that I learned that I encourage all citizens to do is to join the Citizens Academy, which allows you to go to different departments of the city and learn exactly how city government works. And through that, I got to go to the Waterworks building, and they also have a museum that I hadn't known about. And they talked about how the water infrastructure here is one of the oldest in the country, not just in Virginia. And we got to see the original piping made out of wood. It was very interesting, and I highly recommend it. So we have a lot of historical, and we have a lot of new. Shout out to Mizumi's. It's one of my favorite restaurants downtown. I like their food. It's a Japanese restaurant. There's also a lot of community growing. One of the groups I'm part of is called Queer Town Hall. We are an LGBTQIA group that works on activism, and we are trying to build notice in our community that even though Liberty University is in Lynchburg, it is more diverse than just a conservative Christian town. There's a lot of us here that don't fall under the Liberty umbrella.
So no, I definitely want to visit Lynchburg over my tours of Virginia one day. Definitely soon, because I've heard about it a lot. I've had a lot of people who come from other parts of the state, and Lynchburg is always one of those great ones. So I definitely look forward to one day visiting that area. So what I want to do now is to give you the floor to sort of do the elevator pitch for yourself, for your candidacy. Let's assume like you were knocking on a door canvassing, which to me is one of the things I disliked the most when I was doing my city council rounds, because it really gets you out in front of the people, and that can be scary. But I just want you to be yourself here and explain why you are the best candidate in HD 52.
Thank you so much. Before I get into that, I do want to say door knocking is my favorite part. So we do differ on that. I think door knocking is amazing. I love talking to people and hearing about their concerns. As for my elevator pitch, my name is Risa Hayes. I'm running for Lynchburg City in Campbell County, and I am here to fight for 3 things that I think everyone can agree on. That is better schools, better houses, and better jobs. It doesn't matter which side of the political sphere you are. We all want to have those things in a community so that we can thrive and continue to grow. As I've said before, I experienced homelessness, I've experienced joblessness, and I've experienced difficulties in getting education. And I think that these things really shaped who I am as a person. I do not want any child to go through homelessness the way I did. I don't want any child to experience food insecurity the way I did. We need to take care of our community, and I'm here to fight for those voices that are forgotten. And I want to fight for you and fight for Lynchburg and all of Virginia and make sure it is a better place that can continue to thrive.
And I personally want to thank you for coming on, Chez, who, your top spot for politics, Virginia, Risa Hayes. And I hope to see you do well in your endeavor this year going into November. And of course, don't be a stranger. I want to see you keep posting and doing political stuff and just get bigger and better. So thank you again for coming on, Chez Who, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I hope you have a great evening as well.
Thank you so much. Catch you next time. Now, this has been another great Chez Who, and this really shows how much I really want Chesu to be a top spot for politics here in Virginia, because we just had someone who's running in Lynchburg and a little bit of Campbell County, and it's important to hear from voices all over Virginia. Reza Hayes was our guest, running in Virginia's 52nd district. I want you to look her up and go confidently to the voting booths. And of course, like this video, comment your opinions below, and I want to thank the commentators today, both on Facebook, Jessica Anderson, who is running for a delegate herself, and Melody Cartwright on YouTube, who is running for a delegate herself. Can't wait to have you guys on as well. Share this video around, subscribe to the channel of Chesu, and I want to make sure I catch you guys next time.